We saw her coming up the river as we were going to work. It didn't seem possible that she could take what she did and get back. A lot of us shipyard guys would be needed to put her into shape. We saw them coming off the ship, the fellows that had brought her through. They were guys just like us, a little younger maybe. Kids out of school, clerks out of stores, factory workers, machinists, chemists, druggists. The flight deck of the Franklin was just one of America's many main streets. They'd brought their Big Ben home, and now it was up to us. We'd seen lots of ships. We'd built them, and we'd repaired them. But we'd never seen anything like Big Ben CV-13, the USS Franklin. Some of the boys on the ship told us what had happened. A bosun's mate named Tammy, Nikolai Tamiet, pointed out where the gallery deck had been torn by the explosion. Louis Eastland and me, that's me, Pat Marin, on the left. We'd never seen anything quite like it. Looking down from the island, you could see where the first bomb had penetrated the hangar deck and started the whole bloody business. They told us how it happened.
It was 7 minutes past 7 when we got it, March 19th, off Kyushu. The first one hit near the bridge. The other one went through the flight deck, right in the middle of the planes, all of them armed and loaded with gas. They said we had 40,000 gallons of 100-octane gas aboard, and several 100,000 pounds of explosives. On both decks, planes were gassed up, loaded to the teeth with bombs and rockets. And it wasn't 5 minutes after we were hit before our stuff started going off. The Japs dropped only 2 bombs. But before we were through, we had 60 of our own 500-pounders go off and 22 of our 250-pound bombs, and rockets and gas on top of that.
We looked down into the forward elevator pit, Louis and the bosun's mate and me. And with us, John Detlef from the yard, and 2 other kids from the ship, Herman Friedman and Alex Bowman. Friedman used to have a clothing store in the Bronx. Bowman was just out of high school.
The elevator wasn't hit. It just blew out. A couple of hours later, while we were fighting fires, another Jap came diving in at us. The destroyers got him. Some of our fighters had gotten off before we were hit. Together with fighters from other carriers, they kept it hot for the Japs who came out to finish us off. Between the fighters and the escort gunners, none of them got in to hit us again, though plenty of them tried. The worst explosions happened almost 3 hours after we were hit. That was when our bombs and rockets started going off all over the place. Santa Fe had come alongside about 9:30, but she'd been forced to sheer off because of the explosions. By this time, there was just about nothing left of the flight deck. The rockets and bombs were still going off below, and burning gas pouring all over the place. But it wasn't long before the Santa Fe was back again and fighting the fires with us. They said 772 of us were killed or lost, and more than 300 wounded. That's out of 3,000 of us in the complement. The chaplain, Father O'Callahan, was all over the ship, fighting fires and tending the wounded. The kid he's giving the last rites to, he lived, and he's back with the ship. Name's Blanchard.
During lunch hour, we sat there on the fantail listening to the boys. They were sure proud of that ship. Louie and I were, too. One of the auxiliary machine rooms was cut off for 14 hours. Nobody there operating the machinery, but it kept on just the same. Compressors from Carrier, motors driving the compressors, motors from Westinghouse, an auxiliary Buddha diesel powering a fire pump which operated 18 hours without stopping. It seemed as if every company in the country was in there fighting with the Franklin. Cooper Bessemer, Worthington, Sturtevant, Warren, Terry, GE, and hundreds of others. You couldn't help feeling a kind of bond between the men and women who built Big Ben and all her fighting equipment and the men who sailed and fought in her. Burnt and busted as she was, to her crew she was the finest fighting lady of them all. They almost patted her in their pride as they told us the rest of the story.
Somewhere around noon, the destroyer Hickok moved in under the fantail and took off some of the men that were stranded in the after part of the ship. They took the wounded off first. Then the other men jumped down onto the destroyer's deck. Some guys fell in the water. Some were drowned.
Listing at 14 degrees, the Franklin came to the end of the day, March 19th, off Kyushu. But March 20th, the Franklin was underway for Pearl Harbor, making 14 knots, the ship that the Japs had claimed as sunk. She made 20 knots on the way to Panama, her engines throbbing with the kind of power and endurance that only the best of American industry could have given her. 38 days later, she reached the Brooklyn Navy Yard with 704 of her original crew still aboard. Big Ben was home. In the yard, they stood on the cranes as they watched the medals being given out. 184 of the crew were named for combat decorations, and there were Purple Hearts everywhere. These were men that had steamed over 100,000 miles on combat missions and through 2 invasions. They knew the fury of Jap suicide attacks. They had seen other ships of our task forces hit, crippled, and heading for home and repair. And every man aboard looked to the men and women of the shipyards and aircraft plants and the workers of American industry to back them up, to keep our fleet in battle trim, to keep our ships pounding at the shores of destiny across the sea, and to keep our flag flying in triumph through the long, hard fight ahead.